The stars were quiet that night. Captain Park stood on the bridge of his ship, the horizon's wake, and looked out at the endless darkness of space. It was a peaceful moment, the kind of moment that made him remember why he loved flying among the stars. The horizon's wake was not a warship. It was a cargo vessel built to carry supplies from one end of the galaxy to the other. It had thick walls and a strong engine, but no heavy weapons. Just a small crew of 23 people who knew their jobs well. "Captain, we are 4 hours from the colony," said Lieutenant from her station. She was the tactical officer, a woman with sharp eyes and a calm voice. Nothing ever seemed to surprise her. Nodded. "Good. Any problems on the sensors?" "Nothing, sir. Empty space all around us." That was when everything changed. The first warning came as a soft beep from the sensor console, then another, then 10 more. Fingers flew across her controls and her calm expression shifted just slightly. That small change told everything he needed to know. "Report," he said. "Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace," said. 12 contacts. They are surrounding us in a sphere formation." Felt his heart beat faster, but he kept his face still. He had been a captain for 15 years. He knew that panic was the enemy of survival. "Identify them." "Warships, sir. Heavy cruiser class, all of them." A cold feeling spread through the bridge. The Empire was known throughout the galaxy. They were a proud species, tall reptilian creatures with scales the color of dark emeralds. They believed themselves superior to all other races, and they had the weapons to back up their beliefs. The main screen flickered, and a face appeared. It was his yellow eyes narrow and his teeth visible in what might have been a smile. He wore the golden marks of an admiral on his uniform. "Human vessel," the said. His voice was deep and full of contempt. "I am Admiral of the Empire. You are carrying illegal weapons to rebel forces in this sector. You will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in your destruction." Looked at the Admiral's face for a long moment. Then he pressed the button to respond. "Admiral, I am Captain Park of the cargo vessel Horizon's Wake. We are carrying medical supplies and food to the colony on 7. We have no weapons. You are welcome to check our cargo manifest, which I am sending to you now." Did not even look at the data. "Your lies do not interest me, human. Your kind is known for deception. You have 5 minutes to comply or we will open fire." The screen went dark. Silence filled the bridge. Every crew member looked at their captain, waiting to see what he would do. They were surrounded by 12 warships, each one powerful enough to destroy them in seconds. There was nowhere to run. "Turn 2, how long until they can fire?" "Their weapons are already charged, sir. They can fire at any moment." "And our shields?" "They will hold for maybe 30 seconds against that much firepower." Nodded slowly. He walked to his chair and sat down. For a moment he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, there was something different in his expression, something hard and determined. "Lieutenant," he said quietly, "begin Protocol 17. His eyes widened just a little, then she nodded. "Yes, sir." She pressed a series of buttons on her console. Throughout the ship, certain systems began to activate. Others began to shut down. The lights on the bridge dimmed slightly. Press the ship-wide communication button. "All hands, this is the captain. We have guests coming. You know what to do. Move to your positions. Stay calm. Trust each other." He released the button and looked around at his crew. These were good people. They had served with him for years. They had faced pirates and storms and mechanical failures. They had always found a way through. "Sir," said a voice from behind him. It was the chief engineer. He was a thin man with oil stains on his uniform and a mind that could solve any problem. "The package is ready." "Good," said. "Wait for my signal." On the flagship, Admiral watched the human ship with satisfaction. This would be easy. Humans were weak creatures. They had soft skin and fragile bodies. They had only been part of the galactic community for 100 years. They did not understand power the way they did. "Admiral," said one of his officers, "the human ship is not powering down. They appear to be doing nothing." Made a sound of annoyance. "They are afraid, frozen with fear. Send the boarding parties. Take everyone alive if possible. I want to question their captain personally." 3 shuttles launched from the fleet, carrying 50 soldiers each. 150 of the Empire's finest warriors, armed with plasma rifles and protected by heavy armor. It would be like stepping on an insect. On the horizon's wake, tracked the approaching shuttles. "They will dock in 3 minutes, sir." Stood up, "All right, everyone to positions and—" "Sir." "Kill the lights." Pressed a button, and the horizon's wake went completely dark. Every light, every screen, every display vanished. The ship became a black shape against the stars, showing no signs of life at all. On his flagship, saw the power readings from the human ship drop to 0. He laughed. "They have given up. Their systems have failed from fear. This is almost disappointing." The boarding shuttles reached the human ship and attached to the docking ports. The soldiers checked their weapons and prepared to enter. They expected to find humans cowering in corners, begging for mercy. They did not expect what they would actually find. In the darkness of the horizon's wake, Captain stood in a narrow maintenance corridor with 5 of his crew members. Each of them held a simple tool, nothing that looked like a weapon. He smiled in the darkness. "Welcome aboard," he whispered. "Now the real game begins." The first soldiers stepped through the airlock and into the silent ship. They turned on their helmet lights and looked around at the empty corridor. There was no one in sight, no sounds, no movement. One of them spoke into his communicator. "Admiral, we are inside. The ship appears to be abandoned." But even as he said the words, somewhere deep in the ship, a door quietly closed behind them, and the trap began to close. The soldiers moved through the dark corridors of the horizon's wake like hunters searching for prey. Their helmet lights cut through the blackness, showing them empty hallways and sealed doors. The ship was completely silent. Squad leader walked at the front of his group. He was a veteran of many battles, and something about this situation made him uneasy. Ships did not simply go dark like this. Crews did not simply vanish. "Spread out," he ordered his soldiers. "Search every room. The humans are hiding somewhere." The 50 soldiers from his shuttle divided into smaller groups and began to explore the ship. Their heavy boots made loud sounds on the metal floors. In the darkness, those sounds echoed strangely, making it hard to tell where they were coming from. Far above them, in a narrow maintenance shaft, engineer watched through a small grate. He could see them moving below him, their lights swinging back and forth. He pressed a button on his communicator 3 times. A signal. In another part of the ship, Lieutenant received the signal. She was hiding with 4 crew members in a storage room pressed against the wall behind tall stacks of supply crates. She nodded to her team and held up 3 fingers, then 2, then 1. The lights in the corridor outside suddenly flickered on for just 2 seconds. The soldiers spun around, surprised by the sudden brightness. Then the lights went dark again. "What was that?" one of them demanded. Before anyone could answer, a door at the end of the corridor slid open with a soft hiss. The soldiers aimed their weapons at it, but nothing came through. The doorway was just an empty black rectangle. "It could be a malfunction," another soldier said, but his voice was uncertain. "Made a decision. 3 of you check that room, the rest continue forward." 3 soldiers walked toward the open door, their weapons ready. They stepped through the doorway and found themselves in a large cargo bay. Their lights showed rows of metal containers, all sealed and labeled with human writing. "Just cargo," one of them reported, "nothing here." But as he spoke, the door behind them slid shut. The lock clicked into place with a sound that seemed very loud in the silence. The 3 soldiers tried to open the door. It would not move. They tried their communicators, but all they heard was static. Something was blocking their signal. In the maintenance shaft above, smiled and moved to his next position. On the bridge of the flagship, Admiral was growing impatient. His boarding parties had been inside the human ship for 10 minutes, and he had heard almost nothing from them. "Get me a report," he demanded. His communications officer looked worried. "Admiral, we are having trouble reaching the teams. There seems to be interference." "Interference from what?" "I do not know, sir. The human ship is still showing no power. It should not be able to jam our signals." Slammed his fist on the arm of his chair. These humans were playing some kind of game, but whatever tricks they had, they could not stop the might of the Empire. "Send more soldiers," he ordered. "I want that ship taken now." Inside the Horizon's wake, the second wave of soldiers was having the same problems as the first. They entered through different airlocks, expecting to link up with their comrades. Instead, they found empty corridors and locked doors. Squad leader had lost contact with half his original group. Every time he sent soldiers to investigate something, they seemed to disappear. Not dead, just gone, vanished into the darkness of this strange human ship. He was starting to understand that something was very wrong. "All units fall back to the main airlock," he ordered. "We regroup and advance together." But his order reached only a few soldiers. The others heard nothing but static. In a narrow corridor on the lower deck, a group of 8 soldiers walked in tight formation. They had learned not to spread out. They kept their weapons ready and their eyes moving. Then they heard it, a voice, a human voice speaking their language through the ship's speakers. "Hello, friends. Are you enjoying your visit?" The soldiers looked up at the ceiling, trying to find the source of the voice. "Who are you?" demanded. "Show yourself, coward." "Coward?" The voice sounded amused. "I am not the one who brought 12 warships to attack a cargo vessel, but let us not argue about words. I just wanted to tell you something important." "What?" "You are standing on a pressure plate." "Look down." His soldiers looked down. The floor beneath them looked normal, but now that he was paying attention, he could feel that it was slightly raised in the center. "If you move," the voice continued, "the floor will open. You will fall into the recycling tank below. It is not dangerous, but it is very wet and very smelly. I suggest you stay very still." One of the soldiers panicked and jumped backward. The floor panel beneath him tilted, and he fell through with a surprised scream. There was a splash from somewhere below. "I did warn you," the voice said. The remaining soldiers stood frozen, afraid to move. They were elite warriors of the Empire, and they had been stopped by a simple trick. The shame burned in their hearts. On the third deck, Lieutenant led her team through the maintenance tunnels. They moved quickly and quietly, using paths that they did not know existed. Every few minutes, they would appear behind an enemy group, make noise to draw their attention, and then vanish before they could react. The soldiers were becoming nervous. They heard footsteps in the walls. They saw shadows moving at the edge of their lights. They felt watched at every moment. In the engine room, finished typing a long sequence of commands into a hidden terminal. He smiled at his work. "Captain," he said into his communicator, "the package is delivered." In the maintenance corridor where was hiding, the captain received the message. He checked his watch. 45 minutes had passed since the first boarded. By now, they would be confused, scared, and frustrated. It was time for the next phase. He stepped out of his hiding place and walked calmly toward the nearest group of soldiers. They saw him immediately and raised their weapons. "Stop," their leader shouted. "Hands up, human." Raised his hands, he was smiling. "Congratulations," he said. "You found me. I am the captain of this vessel. I surrender." The soldiers surrounded him, their weapons pointed at his head. Finally, they had captured someone. Finally, something was going right. "Take me to your admiral," said. "I think it is time we talked." The soldier in command nodded. This would please Admiral. They would bring him the human captain, and this strange mission would finally make sense. But as they led toward the airlock, he looked up at a camera in the ceiling and winked. Somewhere in the ship, saw that wink on her small screen. Phase 3, she said to her team. Let the real fun begin. Admiral stared at the human captain standing before him on the bridge of his flagship. The creature was smaller than he expected. Thin, soft, and completely calm despite being surrounded by armed warriors. So you are the captain of that cargo ship, said. He walked around slowly, looking at him like a predator examining prey. You gave my soldiers quite a bit of trouble. Shrugged, your soldiers scared easily. Perhaps they need more training. Several officers growled at the insult, but raised a hand to silence them. He was more curious than angry. You surrendered yourself. Why? Because I wanted to talk to you directly, said. And because your soldiers were wasting time searching an empty ship. Empty? Laughed. We have captured 37 of your crew members. No, said with a small smile. You have found 37 of my crew members in places where they wanted to be found. There is a difference. Stopped walking. Something in the human's voice made him uneasy. This creature should be begging for mercy. Instead, he sounded like he was in control. What are you talking about? Looked at the large screen on the bridge, which showed the image of the horizon's wake surrounded by warships. Your ships are very impressive, he said. Beautiful weapons, advanced technology, but technology can be tricky, can it not? Especially when it is connected to other technology. Felt a cold feeling in his stomach. What have you done? When your flagship first contacted us, we exchanged data, your standard communication protocols. My ship sent your ship a cargo manifest, a crew list, and a message of greeting. Paused. It also sent something else. The Admiral turned to his communications officer. Check our systems, now. The officer began typing frantically at his console. His face went pale. Admiral, there is a foreign program in our network. It is spread to all ships in the fleet. I do not know how to remove it. Grabbed by the front of his uniform and lifted him off the floor. The human did not resist. He did not even seem afraid. What did you do? Demanded. I gave your ships a gift, said calmly. A small program that makes them think certain things. Right now, every ship in your fleet believes that your other ships are friendly vessels. They also believe that my cargo ship is one of your own. So what? We can still fire manually. Can you? Asked. Try it. Dropped the human and turned to his weapons officer. Target the human ship. Fire all weapons. The weapons officer pressed the firing controls. Nothing happened. Admiral, the system is refusing the command. It says we cannot fire on friendly vessels. Override it. I am trying. The override is not responding. Across the fleet, similar scenes were happening on every ship. Captains ordered their crews to fire, but the weapons would not respond. Navigation systems began showing strange readings. Some ships started drifting off course. On the bridge of the flagship, stared at the chaos unfolding around him. His perfect trap had turned into a disaster, and the human captain stood in the middle of it all, watching with quiet satisfaction. You cannot do this, said. His voice was different now, less confident. Humans are supposed to be weak, your technology is primitive. Straightened his uniform where had grabbed it. That is what everyone thinks, he said. That is what we want everyone to think. But let me tell you something about humans, Admiral. We have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We have learned every trick, every strategy, every way to win against stronger enemies. When we finally reached the stars and met other species, do you think we forgot everything we learned? He walked toward the main screen, and no one tried to stop him. You came here with 12 warships to capture one cargo vessel. You thought it would be easy. You thought humans would surrender immediately. But you made the same mistake that every enemy has made throughout our history. He turned to face. "You underestimated us." The Admiral stood very still. He was trying to think of a way out of this situation, but his mind was blank. His ships could not fire. His boarding parties were trapped on the human vessel. His fleet was in chaos. Then a new signal appeared on the sensors. "Admiral," the sensor officer called out, "a ship is dropping out of hyperspace. It is. It is a human military cruiser." On the screen, a new ship appeared. It was larger than the horizon's wake, covered in weapons and armor. Its name was painted on the side in bold letters, Soul's Promise. A new voice came through the communication system. It was a woman's voice, calm and professional. "Fleet, this is Commodore Han of the Terran Republic Navy. We received a distress signal from the cargo vessel Horizon's Wake 6 hours ago. I see that you have surrounded our civilian ship with warships. I would like an explanation." "Looked at, you called for help before we even arrived." "Standard procedure said. When our sensors detected your ships following us, I sent a message, just in case. I am a careful man, Admiral." Commodore Han's voice continued. "I am detecting unusual readings from your fleet. Your ships appear to be having technical difficulties. I suggest you stand down immediately. Any hostile action will be met with appropriate response." The weapons on the Soul's Promise were clearly visible. Heavy plasma cannons, missile launchers, shields that could withstand tremendous damage. It was a ship built for war. Looked at his officers. They looked back at him with fear in their eyes. They were supposed to be the hunters. Now they were the hunted. "Admiral," one of his captains called over the communication system, "our navigation is failing. We are drifting toward each other. If we do not regain control soon, there will be collisions." Another captain reported, "Life support is showing errors. I do not know if they are real or false readings." The fleet was falling apart, and knew there was nothing he could do to stop it. Walked toward the communication console. "May I?" he asked politely. Did not stop him. He could not stop anything anymore. Pressed a button. "Commodore Han, this is Captain Park. Thank you for coming. The situation is under control. The soldiers on my ship are being detained peacefully. I believe Admiral would like to discuss terms of surrender." "Surrender," spat the word like poison. Looked at him with something that might have been sympathy. "Admiral, you have two choices. You can surrender now and your soldiers will be returned unharmed. Your ships will be fixed and you can go home with nothing lost except your pride. Or you can continue fighting and things will get much worse." He paused. "Choose wisely." Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his world collapse around him. His mighty fleet drifted helplessly in space. His soldiers were prisoners on a cargo ship. A human cruiser had weapons aimed at his vessels. And the human captain stood before him, waiting for an answer. "You expect me to surrender," said. His voice was rough with anger and shame. "I am an admiral of the Empire. My family has served in the military for 12 generations. We do not surrender to inferior species." Nodded slowly. "I understand. Honor is important to your people. But let me ask you something, Admiral. Is it more honorable to die for nothing or to live and fight another day?" "We would die with glory." "Would you?" Walked to the large window and looked out at the stars. "Your fleet cannot fire. Your ships are drifting into each other. Your soldiers are trapped and unable to fight. If you die today, it will not be in battle. It will be because you refuse to accept reality." He turned back to face the Admiral. "There is no glory in that, only stubbornness." On the bridge, the officers exchanged uncertain looks. They had followed because he was a strong leader, but now they were seeing him faced with a situation he could not solve with strength. One of the younger officers spoke up. "Admiral, perhaps we should consider the humans' offer. Our soldiers on that ship. Some of them are my friends. I do not want them to die because of a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding," spun around to face the officer. This was not a misunderstanding. These humans tricked us. Yes, said calmly. We did because you gave us no choice. You came with warships, you made demands, you accused us of crimes we did not commit. What were we supposed to do? Die quietly? Had no answer for that. On the horizon's wake, Lieutenant was overseeing the captured soldiers. They had been gathered in the main cargo bay, their weapons taken away. Human crew members stood guard, but they kept their distance and their weapons lowered. One of the soldiers, a young male named, sat against the wall and watched the humans with confusion. He had expected to be treated badly. That was how prisoners were treated in the Empire. But these humans had given them water and food. They had even provided medical care for a soldier who had injured his leg during the fighting. A human woman walked over to him. She wore a medical uniform and carried a small bag. Her name tag said, "Oh." "Are you hurt?" she asked in passable language. Shook his head. "No, I am fine." Sat down near him, keeping a respectful distance. "Good. Let me know if you need anything." Could not understand this. "Why are you being kind to us? We came to capture your ship. We were going to take your people prisoner." Was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "When I was young, my grandfather told me a story. He said that in war, the true measure of a people is not how they treat their friends, but how they treat their enemies." That is unusual thinking. Maybe, but I believe it. You are not my enemy right now. You are just a soldier who followed orders. There is no reason for me to be cruel to you. Thought about this. In the Empire, enemies were enemies. They were to be defeated, humiliated, and dominated. The idea of treating a defeated enemy with kindness was strange to him. But as he looked around at the other human crew members, he saw the same attitude everywhere. They were watchful but not aggressive. They spoke to the soldiers politely. They did not mock or threaten. "Your people are strange," he said finally. Smiled. "We get that a lot." On the flagship, the situation was becoming critical. Two of the smaller ships had come dangerously close to colliding. Their captains were screaming at the engineering teams to restore control. Alarms were ringing throughout the fleet. Commodore Hand's voice came through the communication system again. "Admiral, I am detecting unstable conditions in your fleet. I strongly advise you to accept our assistance before something goes seriously wrong." Looked at the chaos on his screens. He looked at his frightened officers. He looked at the human captain who was waiting patiently. "If I surrender," said slowly, "what guarantee do I have that you will honor your terms?" Stepped forward. "I give you my word. Your soldiers will be returned unharmed. Our engineer will remove the program from your systems. You will be free to leave. The only thing you will lose is the battle you should never have started." "Your word," laughed bitterly, "the word of a human." "Yes, the word of a human." His voice was serious. "I know your people think we are liars and cheaters, but I have never broken a promise in my life, Admiral. Ask anyone who knows me." On the soul's promise, Commodore Han watched the exchange. She had served with years ago before she was promoted. She knew he meant every word. "Admiral," she said, "I can confirm that Captain Park is a man of honor. If he says your soldiers will be returned safely, they will be returned safely. You have my word as well." Stood in silence for a long moment. The weight of his decision pressed down on him. He could feel the eyes of his officers, waiting to see what he would do. Finally he spoke. "I accept your terms." The words were quiet, but they carried across the bridge like thunder. Several officers gasped. Others lowered their heads in shame. For the first time in living memory, an admiral had surrendered to humans. Nodded respectfully. "Thank you, Admiral. You made the right choice." He turned to the communication console and opened a channel to his ship. "Lieutenant, this is the captain. Begin returning the soldiers to their shuttles. Start the process to remove the program from their systems. Let us get this finished." On the horizon's wake, the crew moved quickly and efficiently. The soldiers were led back to their boarding shuttles, their weapons returned to them at the airlocks. Some of them looked confused, others looked relieved. A few even nodded at the human guards as they left. Was one of the last to leave. Before he stepped onto his shuttle, he turned to Nurse, who had walked with the group. "Your grandfather," he said, "he was a wise male." Smiled, "He was a good man. Safe travels, soldier." Stepped onto the shuttle. As the doors closed behind him, he knew that something had changed inside him. He would never see humans the same way again. On the flagship, engineer appeared on screen, working with technicians to remove the virus from their systems. It took 2 hours, but slowly, the fleet began to stabilize. Navigation returned. Weapons came back online. Life support showed normal readings. When the last system was restored, looked at one final time. "This is not over," the admiral said. "My government will hear about what happened here." "I hope they do," replied. "Maybe they will think twice before attacking innocent cargo ships in the future." He walked toward the airlock that would take him back to his own ship. At the door, he paused and looked back. "Goodbye, Admiral. I hope we never meet again under circumstances like these." Then he was gone. The fleet departed slowly, their ships limping toward their own territory. Admiral stood on his bridge and watched the human vessels grow smaller on his screen until they disappeared completely. He had not spoken a word since Captain left. His officers worked in silence. No one wanted to be the first to speak. The shame of what happened hung over them like a heavy cloud. Finally turned away from the screen and walked to his private quarters. He had reports to write, explanations to give. His career might be over. His family's honor might be ruined. But as he sat down at his desk, he found himself thinking not about his failure but about the human captain. The man had been calm throughout everything. Even when grabbed him by the throat, even when he was surrounded by enemies, had never shown fear. That kind of courage was rare, even among the. Picked up his data pad and began to write. But the report he wrote was not quite what his superiors expected. Instead of making excuses, he told the truth. He described the human tactics, their technology, their discipline. He wrote that underestimating humans was a mistake that the Empire should not repeat. Whether anyone would listen was another matter. Back near the horizon's wake, the Soul's Promise floated alongside the cargo vessel. Commodore Han had come aboard to speak with Captain personally. They sat in his small office, drinking tea from ceramic cups. The ship was quiet now, the excitement over. The crew was resting after their long ordeal. "You took a big risk," Han said. "What if they had called your bluff?" Shrugged, "It was not a bluff. The virus was real. The traps were real. If they had refused to surrender, we would have found another way." "Another way, against 12 warships." "We are human," said with a small smile. "We always find another way." Han shook her head, but she was smiling too. She had known for years. He was one of the most stubborn men she had ever met, but he was also one of the. "The Galactic Council will hear about this," she said. "A cargo vessel defeating a battle group. It will make waves." "Good. Maybe other species will think twice before attacking human ships. Or maybe they will try harder next time." Considered this. "Perhaps, but that is a problem for tomorrow. Today my crew is alive, my ship is intact, and we still have medical supplies to deliver." He stood up and looked out the small window at the stars. "That is enough for one day." The news of what happened spread quickly through the galaxy. Communication channels buzzed with the story. A human cargo ship, 12 warships, complete victory without a single death. Some species dismissed it as propaganda, humans making up stories to seem more important than they were, but others paid attention. They watched the official reports. They analyzed the sensor data. They studied the tactics. And slowly, quietly, opinions began to change. On the Galactic Council, the human ambassador received an unusual number of meeting requests. Species that had previously ignored humanity suddenly wanted to discuss trade agreements and cultural exchanges. The ambassador sat in his office and refused to see anyone. In a small colony on the edge of explored space, children played a new game. One of them pretended to be captain, giving orders to an invisible crew. The others pretended to be soldiers, falling into imaginary traps. They laughed and ran through the streets, acting out a story that had already become legend. On the horizon's wake, the crew continued their journey. They delivered their medical supplies to 7 Colony, helped unload the cargo, and enjoyed a brief rest before their next assignment. During that rest, a reporter from the Terran News Network came to interview Captain. She was young and excited, her camera drone floating behind her. "Captain, the whole galaxy is talking about what you did. How does it feel to be a hero?" Looked uncomfortable with the word. "I am not a hero. I am just a cargo captain who did not want his ship to be taken." "But you defeated 12 warships. That is amazing." "I did not defeat them. We convinced them to leave. There is a difference." The reporter was not satisfied with this answer. "What would you say to other species who think humans are weak and primitive?" Thought about this for a moment. Then he said, "I would say that strength comes in many forms. Big muscles and powerful weapons are one kind of strength, but there are other kinds. The strength to stay calm in danger. The strength to think clearly when others are afraid. The strength to treat enemies with respect even when you have won." He paused. "Humans have survived on a dangerous planet for a very long time. We have learned that the strongest creature is not always the one who wins. Sometimes the one wins. Sometimes the most patient one. Sometimes the one who is willing to do what others think is impossible." The reporter nodded, recording every word. "One last question, Captain. After everything that happened, are you afraid that we'll come back for revenge?" Smiled. It was a small, confident smile. "Let them come," he said. "We will be ready." The interview ended, and the reporter left to edit her story. Within days, words were playing on screens across the galaxy. Other species heard them and wondered what else humans were capable of. On the horizon's wake, life returned to normal. Lieutenant ran tactical drills. Engineer fixed a small problem with the water recycling system. Nurse organized the medical supplies they had brought from the colony. Captain walked through his ship, talking to crew members, checking systems, making sure everything was running smoothly. This was his life. This was what he loved. Late at night, when most of the crew was sleeping, he stood on the bridge alone. The stars stretched out before him, endless and beautiful. Somewhere out there they were licking their wounds. Other species were reconsidering their opinions about humanity. The galaxy was changing, one small event at a time. And at the center of it all, one cargo ship continued its journey through the darkness, carrying supplies and hope to distant colonies. The horizon's wake jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind nothing but a fading flash of light. But the story of what happened that day would be remembered for generations. In bars and meeting halls across 100 worlds, beings of every species would tell the tale. They would describe how 12 warships surrounded a single human vessel, how the humans refused to give up, how they turned the trap around on their enemies. And they would always end the story the same way. Never underestimate the humans. They are small and soft and fragile, but they never stop fighting, they never stop thinking, and they never ever give up. The horizon's wake sailed on through the stars, just one ship among thousands, but its crew carried with them something more valuable than any cargo. They carried the spirit of humanity, and that spirit could not be captured, could not be contained, could not be defeated. Not today, not ever.